I can hardly expect my daughter to make good choices if she hasn't had practice at making choices of any kind. And those choices can and do start at home with small things. G'day, I'm Debra Caldow. Welcome to the Red Giraffe Solutions Expanding Worlds podcast, where we aim to support you as you help your young person with additional needs plan for their future, a future where they're safe, secure, and live a rewarding and fulfilling life. From around the world, I share stories and I share solutions from people making this possible right now. I'm a parent of a young person with additional needs, so I understand the challenges. Many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast have already helped me design a better future for my daughter, and I hope that they might help you as well to imagine what's possible for your young person. This podcast is made possible by Red Giraffe Solutions, which is a project I'm proud to be part of, supporting families to build a better future for their children. We now have available at Red Giraffe Solutions an online course called Independent Cooking Made Easy. This is a new and unique approach we developed when we realised traditional cooking techniques and recipes were never going to enable our daughter to cook without some support or supervision. It's a safe, simple system that uses no more than 5 ingredients, has no weighing, cutting or chopping, and no lifting of heavy dishes. Each of the 16 recipes in the course includes a step-by-step video of our daughter making the meal, plus a visual recipe card. We developed this for our daughter to solve her challenges with cooking, and every recipe in the course she can and does genuinely cook for herself. You can find a link to the course in this episode's show notes. Recently I was talking to a job coach about what families could be doing to support their young people when they first start working. And one of the main things she said was to make sure they knew about making choices, and to do that by giving them more choices at home. And then in the last couple of weeks, I've been sharing a conversation about a housing project called Satsuma Neighbour. And one of the themes in this was the idea that our young people don't get a lot of choice about where they live or who they live with. I think most of us take choice for granted, at least until we're in a situation where our choice is reduced, and then we realise it's not easy when you don't have a choice. Given that our young people with additional needs are much less likely to be in paid employment because there are so few choices of places to work, and they're more likely to live at home with parents for much longer, again because when it comes to housing there isn't enough choice, then choice is a pretty big issue for young people like my daughter. But these are larger societal, macro if you like, issues, which as we all know take time to change. Although I hope that many of the guests that I have on the podcast show that change is happening in terms of both employment and housing. So taking these two areas out, where else do our young people sometimes not get the chance to have choice? And in fact, before I talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about why choice is so important for our young people. I think we can start with a bit of history and the way many of our children would have been expected to live their lives 50 years ago or even 20 years ago. Certainly inclusion wasn't the focus, and independent living was considered unusual. Because if we think about what independence means, it's having the ability to make our own choices and control our own lives. It's about choices like where we live, what we eat, how we spend our time, and what we spend our money on. Now, of course, I'm aware that some of our young people need support in certain areas. But I would also say that I think this is an area that they're not given enough choice. I was recently in a meeting where we were talking about the care sector, and clearly one of the main issues was that people receiving care had little or no choice as to how that care was provided. So choice seems so much at the centre of everything that would drive independence, and yet it doesn't seem to be at the centre of anything. But I should add that there are organisations that I've spoken to who do put choice at the centre, but unfortunately they're the exception, not the rule. There seems to be this conversation about choice and empowering people, but it doesn't always translate into providing the resources that would drive choice. But back to what I said about lack of choice, and it not just being about paid employment or where to live. It's about independence, it's about confidence, it's about self-worth. So that's why choice is so important. Like any skill, choosing is a skill that needs to be practiced. I know that I've been guilty of not giving my daughter choices. I wouldn't say it's been deliberate, it's just that I've not really thought about it that much. And there have certainly been times when it felt like it was quicker to make the decisions myself, rather than giving her the choice. And I guess as well, I always assume that I know what she wants. And clearly that's simply not true. And of course there's my fear that she will make the wrong choice. But it's true, we learn from our mistakes. The area that comes to mind most here is around money. It's very tangible when our young people make poor choices and spend money on things they shouldn't. But delayed gratification is one of those skills that's very hard to learn for all of us. But if we never get it wrong, how do we learn? And how do we one day get to that point when we get it right? I can hardly expect my daughter to make good choices if she hasn't had practice at making choices of any kind. And those choices can and do start at home with small things, by letting her decide more things for herself. And giving her those choices has meant that I've had to make a choice as well. A choice to let go, to not micromanage, and let her do more for herself. Because if she does those things for herself, she makes choices. If she chooses not to do her washing, she chooses not to have her favourite t-shirt to wear. If she chooses not to make lunch for herself, well, you get the idea. Of course, this is a gradual process. We didn't just stop supporting her with things overnight. But over time we stepped back. I suppose a bit like a job coach does at work. We also tried to make the right choices easier for her. We certainly did that when it came to cooking, with the independent cooking made easy method that we developed with her. But I do think for her, making choices is still something that she isn't 100% comfortable with. When she gets anxious, she will often ask us what to do. When it comes to this, we've tried to make her aware that it's okay to doubt ourselves. And it also opens up the conversation with her that often we make choices based on our emotions, back to that delayed gratification idea. Plus, the other thing we try to help her understand is that it's always okay to ask for advice. Now, of course, that sounds counterintuitive because we're telling her to make choices for herself. But here, I'm not advocating that we be the only people she asks for advice. This is the important part of her planning for her future, having people around her she can trust. Helping her make good choices or decisions, as they are for her, as she becomes more independent, is an ongoing process. It requires a choice on our part to let her make her own mistakes. Of course, we're still right here beside her, hopefully providing useful tools and resources that help her make informed and confident choices, which is all part of her developing all the skills she needs to live a great life, long after we're no longer around to support her. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that the stories and solutions shared on here help you as you support your young person to create their future. If you know anyone who would find the ideas useful, please share the podcast with them. To support the podcast, please consider finding out more about the Independent Cooking Made Easy online course. It's a safe, simple system that works. There are links to the course in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn at Debra Caldow. I'd love to have a conversation with you on any of the topics we all care about. Bye for now.